Hey guys, welcome back to... I'm not gonna sneeze. Welcome back to Unapologetic Book Nerd. Today, I want to talk about diversity in books. Or more of the lack of diversity in books. So recently, I just finished reading The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas. And quick review, I loved it. There's a discussion talk on my channel with my twin sister, identical. And we go through the book in detail, non-spoilerly, so go ahead and check that out. Anyway, when I was reading The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas, I realized that this is the first book in a long time that I read that has an author of color and the main character as a person of color. And it got me thinking, how many books have I read where the author was a person of color or the main character was a person of color? So I decided to do some research. I went through all of my books. This is literally not even 1% of the books I have. I went through all of my books in my bookshelf, in my home library, in the computer room at my house. It's a mess. I will show you, but I can't because it's a mess. And I went through all my sister's books, all my mom's books, my books in my room, and I went through my Goodreads, which turned out not to be a good idea because Goodreads deleted all of my book accounts from prior to 2017. For some reason, I don't know, I've been trying to get it back. If you have any ideas of how to get those back, please do. However, I still have a good memory of the books I've read. I still look through my Nook, and I looked through everything, and this is what I found out. So, not including books that I read on the Nook or I got from the library, here are my books that are either from a person of color who wrote them or have a main character who's a person of color, or both. So 13 books, and then on top of 4 other books, I'm so bad at math. I only read 17 books where it's a person of color who's the main character or the author is a person of color. And that is actually very little compared to all the books I've read. Last summer, I read about 30 books. Of those 30 books, the only books that had a main character as a person of color was the Lunar Chronicles series by Marissa Meyer, which is a book written by a white woman. Now, I really am a big fan of the Lunar Chronicles series. I think the Lunar Chronicles series is good. I think Marissa Meyer's decision to have main characters who are Asian and not white was very different and very good for the book. However, the book is not perfect in its representation and sometimes goes under the line of approbation sometimes. But I really did enjoy those books. This is not a lot of books, and from all the books I've read last year, I only know about 2 that the author is a person of color. Now, I'm not calling anyone racist. You're not a racist if you don't read books of people of color. There's not necessarily anything wrong with you, but there is a problem that, one, most books, especially most books that are YA, are written by authors who are white or have white main characters. Now, this is no surprise. If you go down the aisle of a Barnes & Nobles, especially the YA novel, all you see are pretty white girls on the covers. Most of the publication industry is white. So a lot of the statistics that are about the lack of diversity in YA come from 2014, 2015, mostly because there hasn't been another overreaching census. Things have changed, especially last year. However, the majority is still white and the majority of stories are still white. If you don't think that is a problem, time to check yourself. That is a problem. For example, The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas. Now, we've read a lot of books about racism, a lot of contemporary novels about racism, a lot of futuristic sci-fi novels that take a metaphor about racism, but it is something different when instead of the author being someone who's white, and the author being a person of color going into these themes, the book does shed more light. And it's not just because the author's not white, then the book is automatically better. No, but it gives a different perspective that is really needed. Let's go into how many books I have that are either from an author with a main character, a person of color, and the author is also a person of color, or just the main character. So let's do the stack. Now, this is not a lot of books, especially for those of you who read a lot. You know that this is not a lot of books. 13 books is what I know some people read in like 2 months. Books I've read throughout the years. It's not a lot. Give and take, the oldest book in here is from my freshman year of high school. This isn't as diverse as I want it to be. Just to give you an idea, these 15 books here are all white. And I've read these. This isn't good. And now I'm going to go into why that isn't good. I talked about it briefly with The Hate You Give and why it's important, but this is why I want to diversify my bookshelf. I learned a lot from reading The Hate You Give. Stuff like that. I also read a lot of books where there are people of color as side characters, but yet are so poorly represented that the fandom becomes divided. A good example, this will be the Throne of Glass fandom. Now, the Throne of Glass fandom, whenever racism comes up, it's like a huge battle of those trying to defend Sarah J. Maas, saying she's not a racist, and those saying how Sarah J. Maas represents people of color in the books are very much racist. Conversation is more complicated than that, but that is usually what we have. We either have white people, white authors writing about people of color, either as side characters or main characters, and doing it poorly, or not enough authors of color writing about people of color. New Orleans by Sherry L. Smith, which is a book that my sister has read that is completely underrated, which is about science fiction with a black female lead who is trying to survive a dystopian post-apocalyptic New Orleans. And from what I've started reading and from what my sister told me, it's great. And for those of you who are looking for a really good post-apocalyptic book and who are tired of romance, this is it. This book has no romance. This book is purely about survival. Yet, this is the first book I've found where it's a black woman who wrote a science fiction novel with a black lead in it. That is very rare, yet there's not enough books of this. There is several sources that I have linked down below that talk about the issue of diversity in the publication industry, and especially in YA. So how diverse is my bookshelf tag? Is I want you to look at your bookshelf and then take out all the books where a person of color wrote it, or a person of color is the lead. And then count those all up, separate them, count those up, and then look at how long you've read those books, how long those books has been there. Look at your Goodreads, do that too, but really don't be afraid to look into your bookshelf. And don't be afraid to admit that your books aren't diverse, and that's okay. But we should demand more from the publication industry, and we should demand more of great books from all authors, because you really are missing great stories if you only get stories from authors who all look alike. With this book tag, how diverse is my bookshelf, I am going to tag a couple of booktubers, and I am going to ask them to look at their own bookshelf. I also challenge you. I challenge you to look at your bookshelf and see how diverse it is. You're probably going to find out that most of your books are white. Most of your books are from white authors, and most of your books have white lead characters. And maybe that will prompt you to look at more diverse books. And disclaimer, I know that I'm white. I know that I have a lot of privilege to do this. I know that if I was a person of color, chances of me getting a lot of backlash for asking for people to do this might be a lot higher. I also understand that I never grew up with a lack of representation, ever. But from my friends who are people of color, and from other reviews that I have read about from people of color, lack of representation in their books really does affect them. And that is more than enough reason to really look at our own bookshelves and look in our own readings and see what we can do better. I challenge everyone to do this. I hope you do it. I hope you comment down below and tell me about your experience. And if you have any questions, if you have any suggestions for future videos or for books by people of color or people of color main characters, that will be wonderful, and I will love, love, love to read them. This has been Delfina Barriero. Thank you for watching my channel. It's been Unapologetic Book Nerd.